should Auburn hire as their next head coach? That is the question we want to try to figure out today. More to the point of who is going to be the best hire. It's not always going to be the flashy hire. It's not going to be the group of five darling. It is solely based on what is the situation at Auburn or LSU or Florida? What is going to be the circumstances and expectations for this head coach? Are they expecting national championship within 3 years? Are they expecting consistent college football playoff contention? Are they expecting a 3-year rebuild and then maybe by year 4 they can start to compete and have honest, real expectations? Because I think there's the difference between real expectations and nice to have expectations. I think of Hugh Freeze in Auburn, funny enough, for the first 2 years, there wasn't real expectations. You wanted to see growth. You wanted to see talent acquisition. But year 3 is when we had real expectations and they failed. And what's the best adjective here? In an insane way. And I have a list of coaching candidates because Hugh Freeze is left to go golf. Hugh Freeze has gone to golf and he's not the head coach at Auburn football right now. So we have a long list by Pete Nakos in terms of the coaching board. And I want to make it very clear. These are not guaranteed to be the guys that end up being the head coach at Auburn. This is the list as of November 4th, 2025. This list could easily change within a month. These decisions are not going to be made tomorrow. So fully expect these names potentially to be a guy that's going to get hired at Auburn is going to be someone that isn't on this list. But I think with how unique it is with some of these candidates, I think it'd be worth our time to potentially look at who could be the next Auburn head coach. Why not? Let's give it a grade. Let's give these guys a grade on it. So as we look at the coaching list for Auburn, the number one guy that gets named is John Summerall out of Tulane. He was in coaching searches and interviews last year. Tulane fell off. It's very clear that more than likely he's letting the distractions really seep into Tulane football. They had an embarrassing loss to UTSA, and I'm fully expecting this to be the offseason that we see John Summerall take at least a Power 4 job, if anything, an SEC job. And I really do think John Summerall would be a great fit at Auburn. He's the obvious choice that everyone has been saying, very similar to Florida and Lane Kiffin. He's been the popular option. The questions I have about John Summerall, as I would grade it, more likely depending on who they bring in terms of the coaching staff, because I think that's something that people will not speak about enough, is what kind of coaching staff are you bringing, and, focus too much of their time on the head coach. But regardless, I think it would be an A- hire. Sometimes it's 2 + 2 = 4. Sometimes it's peanut butter and jelly. It just works and it's simple. When we're talking about John Summerall, he's going to be a program builder. He's going to be someone that brings in a culture, a defined standard of what he wants his program to look like. Could we run into an issue of what we saw with Billy Napier, where he could bring in a ton of talent? He could do everything right in the internal side, but as soon as we get to Saturdays, it completely crumbles. Yeah, Auburn could definitely take that risk of scaling in terms of the quality of coach going from the group of 5 to the Power 4. But based on everything you could read about John Summerall, this is someone that is a Power 4 coach stuck at a group of 5 school, and he's going to get a job to potentially scale his operation. I really do wonder if Auburn's wanting to eat their vegetables in this situation. And what do I mean by that? I mean, take the guy that may not be the splash hire. There's guys that could be splash hires that we're going to talk about here. The high profile names, the ones that is going to draw a ton of attention to your program. But John Summerall, though he's not going to bring a ton of attention as a Lane Kiffin, as a Kenny Dillingham, he's going to be the guy that I think is the best fit for Auburn. And I really do wonder if Auburn's going to be willing to eat their vegetables in this situation, because I do think it's the right guy for them. We also got to talk about Alex Golesh. I think that's a little less likely, although I'm a big Alex Golesh fan, former offensive coordinator from Tennessee, now the South Florida coach. He's done a remarkable job. He's had over, 3 years of being able to punch up his weight class with a group of 5 job. He's been able to build an incredibly well built out culture at USF. I just think the match there doesn't fit as well as a John Summerall. Although if they want to dip their toes into the group of 5, I think he's the second best option. Brent Key is an option that I think is not going to be one that Auburn wants maybe internally when we're talking about getting alignment with NIL funding. Auburn's got a lot of great sports. I mean, basketball has been highly profiled. We're talking about baseball as well as one that they've been wanting to drum up a lot more attention. And you do need a coach that is going to want to fight internally for those NIL funds. It's not like they're lacking in that area. We saw a guy like Hugh Freeze be able to find a way to get a ton of NIL funding to this Auburn program, fully expecting him to be able to be a guy that was getting a ton of talent in the door. Not to say Brent Key's not going to be able to do that. He gives me the vibes of Louisville head coach Jeff Brom, a guy that's just going to be focused on winning games on Saturdays, not someone that's going to be a politician on the interior. Not to say Hugh Freeze was that type of guy, but I definitely think he's a little bit more that than a Brent Key. Although I do think he's another eat your vegetables option. If you want to go win football games, you go hire Brent Key. Be curious if you would want to leave Georgia Tech. We also have to talk about the elephant in the room. Jimbo Fisher, if he was to be hired by Auburn, and you may laugh and you may say, how are we talking about Jimbo Fisher in another SEC job? You know, we just had to pay $50+ million to get rid of Hugh Freeze. And now we're going to go up our weight class into the number one guy in terms of buyout percentage. We're looking at Jimbo Fisher. They wouldn't name him on the Pete Nako's article as a meme, as a joke. This is a serious thing that they are considering, and it wouldn't shock me if the administration internally for Auburn was being dead serious about this. The weight of a national championship winning coach, the PR campaign that we've been seeing over the past couple months for a Jimbo Fisher has been very real. And this has been the one job that I think a lot of people are really starting to insert his name into the conversations. Now, if the administration wants to go get a guy like Alex Golish, Brent Key, John Summerall, they can easily go get that guy. But if they want the high profile name, the one that's going to get the boosters excited, listen, these guys aren't going to be watching every team across the country. They want to go see who's going to be the guy that's going to win games for Auburn. And they end up maybe believing that Jimbo Fisher's that guy. Who knows? Maybe as time has progressed, the thoughts of what happened in 2023 and 2022 for Texas A&M goes out the door. If you have not watched the Stadium Pulse before, I have a lot of deep roots when it comes to Texas A&M football. If Auburn does this is an F- higher. Anything below an F that you can go to, I don't care if it's a Z level higher. That's not even a grading scale. Why are we considering Jimbo Fisher as an SEC head coach? Not even trying to make him go through the trials of a group of 5 job like we're seeing with Dan Mullen at UNLV, like we've seen with Lane Kiffin. I believe it was at it was a Florida school. Oh, Florida Atlantic. We are not even forcing Jimbo Fisher to go through those hoops, and arguably it somehow he did a worse job at Texas A&M with all those resources. I don't understand why Auburn's even considering Jimbo Fisher to be the head coach. A lot of Auburn faithful probably are going to tell me, oh, he's not going to be in consideration. He would not be named if it wasn't any level of seriousness. Now, a guy that doesn't have a Power 4 job or a Group of 5 job that I do think would be the better option, James Franklin to Auburn makes a lot of sense to me. I think he is the perfect balance of being able to set a defined culture at Auburn, paired with the fact that he's going to be able to communicate with boosters, do a lot of the interior work. I've always called him a politician type, a CEO type of head coach that can build up a great staff. And I really do believe if Auburn wants consistency, sure, they want to get back to the national championships that we saw in the late 20 or the early 2010s. I really do believe that he would be the best head coach to at least get him close to there. And I'm always of the idea that just because a head coach has not done something doesn't mean that they can't. I get it. He flamed out at Penn State. It didn't work out. They pulled the trigger really quickly with a make or break year with him. That doesn't mean I can't have any kind of faith that James Franklin could work at Auburn. And frankly, I do think, and pun intended, I think out of all the options, especially the ones that don't even have a job right now, when you're considering a Jimbo Fisher, I do not know how you could go with a Jimbo Fisher and not a James Franklin. You could make a fair argument that we're talking about maybe James Franklin doesn't even want the job. He doesn't see the full alignment, but they seem more in line than like an LSU or a Florida right now where their administrations are kind of wonky. So we could be talking about James Franklin to go into Auburn, and I think that would be like a B+, A- type of hire. I will say the home run hire is 2 names. Clark Lee from Vanderbilt. I think Clark Lee will give you the consistency. He's been able to do it at a Power 4 job, not just any Power 4 job. He's been able to do it at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is doing things that we haven't seen since World War II. If Auburn's able to pull away from another SEC program in Nashville, Vanderbilt has a very underrated amount of terms of resources now that boosters have actually gotten a taste of real good football. It wouldn't shock me if they were able to retain a guy like Clark Lee, but if you're able to get him with the resources that Auburn has, with the pedigree that Clark Lee's been able to build at a program that no one was able to get any sustained success outside of James Franklin, and he immediately dipped to Penn State, I would be very impressed if they were able to get a Clark Lee. And then Kenny Dillingham, he's got the great blend. I would be shocked if you were able to pull him away from his alma mater, but this is the type of job that will throw money at any head coach if you guarantee them some success. And we have a guy that would build a great culture, I think bring a ton of excitement. He's a high-profile name. If you want to check all your boxes, you go throw a major number at a guy like Kenny Dillingham. And that's not even the top of the list. Like, that is not the entire list, but those were the key names I wanted to talk about when we're looking at the Auburn job.